Welcome to Craving the Heat, where desire takes the lead and every story leaves you wanting more. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments and keep up with our latest naughty stories. I never thought it would start again so soon. The morning after that fumbling, raw reawakening of desire, I believed the fire had burned out. That the haze of excitement, shame, guilt, whatever it was, had cooled when sleep claimed him. But when he stirred, eyes blurred awake, the second round began before I could breathe. I didn't stop him. I let it happen. I'm Isabel, married to Matt for 4 years. He's considerate, thoughtful, dependable. Lives by a moral code one once loved. We share laughter on lazy Saturdays. Holiday dinners with his parents. Only somewhere along the way, our marriage became comfort inflicted. Not the same lush desire that felt sacred in the beginning. Then in walked Nico in the late hours of a Tuesday. In a kind of moment that feels meaningless until it becomes everything. He was a creative consultant, soft-spoken, endlessly perceptive. He noticed small things. I folded my cardigan with care. My bruised knuckles after a long run. When I inhaled the opposite corner of despair before talking about family stuff. We flirted in half smiles and emails disguised as jokes. Then one night at a client's workshop, I watched him while he spoke his cadence. The hint of a smile, the way his tie twitched when he paused. I excused myself, stumbled into a deserted hallway, and his silhouette slipped into view. When we fell into each other in that stairwell, it was chaos cured. Not clean, not kind. There was light and danger in that darkness. When he finally left, I stood stunned in my heels, breath ragged, sweat beneath my shirt. That initial act shattered something within me, but it didn't stop the impulse when he messaged later. Morning? I'm sorry, can we? I told myself yes before I even read it. Round 2 happened at his apartment the next morning. I came early, mistook the light for permission. When he woke up, eyes watering with regret and something else, he whispered, I'm sorry, but his lips hadn't slowed, and I didn't let him go. That phrase rang in my head for months. He woke up, continued round 2, and I still didn't let go. As if surrender was both the weapon and wound. I lied. To Matt with precision. I invented work trips, late meetings, clients who didn't exist. I rewrote timelines in my mind. In our bed, I slipped between the sheets, my body numb, my heart pounding, the ring on my finger heavy with contradiction. I never meant to love Nico. I told myself it was a cheap drug, but I kept chasing the high. I craved his voice in the half-lit room. I craved the way sweat stuck his hair to his neck, the taste of his skin at dusk, the exhaustion of surrender. When I finally stumbled out the door afterward, I liked to pretend I still had control, but he had me. I flinched when someone brushed. Me in the subway. I cried in the shower when I thought no one saw. I wondered which version of me people thought they knew, the safe wife, the discreet stranger, the woman losing herself. One night, I stayed over. At sunrise, Nicholas woke quietly, pressed the softness of regret into my collarbone, murmured, I can't do this, but the second wave had started already. He kissed me again, just once, soft and fatal, and I let him, when words of fear turned into threats of exposure. Someone in the team gossiping. A teammate's surprised email panic set in. I panicked not because I'd be caught, but because I realized I might never feel driven by desire again, and the guilt of that deficit frightened me. One evening at home with Matt, he smiled at me, asked about dinner ideas, and my chest hollowed. The weight of betrayal was heavier than the weight of my heart. I confessed, not everything, but enough. He stood like a statue, confused, wounded, grief folding in slow layers over his face. I left. I couldn't be what he deserved. Not while my body still ached for Nico's guilty blur. I moved into a small apartment above a laundromat. Everything echoed. The washer's hum, my heels on the tile floor, the emptiness where trust used to live. I saw therapists. I scribbled journals. I cried over stubbled bathroom mirrors and in traffic lights. I didn't see Nico again after that. I blocked his number, changed routines. But I woke at night, And there was this voice in my dreams fevered whispers about regret. And we should never have. Months passed. I learned to cook for myself. I taught myself forgiveness became an internal, quite not earned from others, but rooted in self-kindness. I started writing short fiction, women caught in secret loops of desire, craving catastrophe because they didn't know how to ask for clarity. One afternoon, I ran into Matt at a cafe. We sat across one another in awkward quiet, no blame. Just the soft gravity of two people reshaped by love and loss. He drank tea, I sipped espresso. We nodded at ghosts of our shared memory. He said he hoped I'd find peace. That goodbye was neither bitter nor tender, it was honest. And oddly, in that candor, I felt release. Still the ache returns sometimes. Not all hunger is soft. Some hunger is scars. I feel it like skeleton hands clenching at dawn. But now I whisper back, not this time. Because I've learned that desire demands acknowledgement, not denial. And complicity is not healing. I didn't walk away because I knew I'd be damaged forever. I walked away because I finally saw that I could choose not to chase destruction for comfort again, and now I'm learning what it means to want something. Safer but still real. I tried to rebuild a routine. Therapy twice a week, long walks with my headphones, cooking meals that didn't taste like guilt or nostalgia. But healing didn't arrive on schedule. It arrived in flashbacks, waking up in Matt's bed with Nico's scent still on my pillow, remembering the feel of his body when he woke up and started again, how I let him. I began writing again fictional. Renditions of that hallway, that stairwell, that second round in the morning light. The truth hurt in a way unvarnished words didn't. Fiction hinted at sorrow without indicting me. One misty Thursday, while editing my draft in a cafe, I felt a jolt. Matt sat across the room with someone else, a woman I didn't recognize. They weren't whispering, they were laughing quietly. Familiar laughter. I froze. Eventually, he looked up, our eyes collided, mine filled with dread, his with cautious warmth. She looked over and curtsied politely. The same Elise I'd bumped into at that spring market years ago, smiling beside. Her husband, their daughter by her side, but something in her expression flickered confusion or recognition. She excused herself, whispering to Matt, and they left. Something shifted in my chest, anger, relief, awe. Before I could decipher it, the plot twist hit. Elise was pregnant again, and it wasn't Matt's. She'd come back not to confront me. I recognized that. She'd returned because her daughter needed a friend. A woman she'd once mistaken me for because we looked alike. There'd been photos college friends. She thought I moved back to town. I realized then that for the first time since everything fell apart, someone had mistaken my shadow for a real version of me. Someone reached toward me not with grief, but with connection. Not judgment, but kinship. They invited me for coffee the next week. I said yes. The conversation wandered. Her miscarriage last spring. Her grief and fear. The way she looked at cartoons with her little girl, pretending everything might be okay again. She didn't ask about Nico or Isabel, just asked, "How? Do you forgive yourself when you still wake up wanting what you can't have?" I answered honestly. Because I know that wanting doesn't always mean losing. And that sometimes survival doesn't look like redemption, it looks like someone asking how you really are. Weeks passed. We began meeting regularly. Elise talked about grief in ways familiar to my own soul. I sat beside her at art galleries, quiet. Told her about the open mic nights, the short stories I wrote about secret crave loops. She listened, nodding dots slowly, my guilt distilled into something else. Purpose. I volunteered to lead writing sessions for women who'd survived painful loss. Women who didn't speak about desire, but about what it meant to want connection, to empty out shame. I gathered our stories in designs that read like small prayers. You're allowed to be messy. You're allowed to heal at your own pace. Then the other twist. At one gathering, one woman read a story titled, "He Woke Up Again," and I stayed. The phrasing felt mine. The storyteller had found it tucked inside a journal left at the shelf of the cafe where I write. It was mine. I hadn't realized I'd left it behind after editing. She confessed how those words gave her the courage to speak her own buried truths. Watching her reclaim them to free something I thought corrosive felt like redemption. I messaged Nico once, not for reconciliation, just to notice. I said, "You changed my vocabulary of wanting." He replied simply, "Thank you." And nothing else. No regret, no reason to return. Just acknowledgement. Then another message. "I hope you're meeting yourself with kindness." I stared at it as if he held a mirror in his hands. Camille, no, Isabel was more than a body in betrayal. She became a collection of survivors, small stations of healing, stories shared over flickering candlelight. Grief and desire redefined. Still, some nights, I feel the ache stirring in my chest. The memory of his lips as he woke, the hunger that demanded more. But in those times, I breathed through it. I let it surface, whisper back, "Not this time," because I finally know that wanting is not a crime. That survival sometimes means wanting something safer, and that the places that hurt can become the spaces that teach. After building that fragile. Routine therapy twice a week. Cooking meals that didn't taste like guilt. I still woke in cold sweats, haunted by the memory of Nico's body curled beside me, whispering apology before kissing me again at dawn. The ache was clinging. I kept writing. Tiny moments at the cafe, scenes that played over in my head like broken films. The stairwell kiss, the sticky warmth of morning skin still fresh with possibility, regret, and surrender. Then one morning, while editing in a quiet cafe, I glanced. Up and there he was, Matt, across the room, with someone new. The same Elise I'd seen at the market years ago, the woman with the daughter. Only now she wore a softer grief on her face, and her stride was gentler, grieved but steady. Their eyes met mine, and he nodded as if in acknowledgement, warmth without. Pain like he carried peace now. Elise's expression flickered. Recognition, then kindness. She excused herself gracefully, whispering something to Matt. I understood later. She was expecting a baby, just not his. A detail he hadn't known yet. Their shared grief echoed mine. Elise reached out again, this time across that awkward silence, with a simple question. How do you forgive yourself when you still wake up wanting what you can't have? I told her honestly, because sometimes the hurt is deeper than the need, and survival isn't about denying desire. It's about choosing breath over collapse. We began meeting regularly. Over coffee and long walks, we shared grief and longing. Elise told her story, loss, loneliness, motherhood while grieving a dream she thought she lost forever. I told mine. Betrayal, secrets, how each return of his. Touch felt like both sin and salvation. One day, Elise invited me to co-lead a writing circle she was starting for women rebuilding after betrayal or grief. I said yes without hesitation. Our group became something unexpected. Quiet candlelit rooms, journals laid open, each woman sharing what it felt like to crave something wrong and decide to prioritize something else. We made signs titled, "I Am," allowed to want more, and handed them out at cafes, bookstores, healing centers. At one workshop, a woman read from a note titled, "He woke up again and I stayed." It sounded eerily familiar. She admitted she'd found the page inside a notebook I'd left at the cafe where I edit. She thought it was hers until she opened it. Seeing the line gave her the courage to share her own buried secret. I realized I made something beautiful from something toxic, and then came true forgiveness. Whisper from Nico. I sent him a message just to close the loop, not to relight any fire. "You changed my vocabulary of wanting," I wrote. He replied days later, "I hope you're meeting yourself with kindness." Those words felt like a mirror held straight. I hadn't expected absolution. But there it was, not apology, not regret. Just a reflection. So I stood on the edge of the ocean the next morning, wind biting my bare feet, salt in the air, and I thanked both of them. The man who held me when I betrayed the other, and the other who held faith in me while I betrayed him. I released both of them. Not with hatred, not with shame, but with recognition. Years later, the ritual of that morning returned not as pain, but as memory. I published a collection of essays and short stories inspired by those dark echoes. Readers wrote in, women who woke in fear, who ate guilt in the darkness, who needed to hear it was okay to still want, but separate that wanting from surrender. I replied to every message. One email came from Matt. He quietly read one essay. He wrote, "Your words bring me peace, and I'm so glad you're writing those stories now. You deserve safety and clarity." I saved it. A benediction. Another came from Elise, newly expecting again. We marked the date another heart weaving into. This web of wounds healing. She said, "There is no phantom like shared grief. But there is beauty in choosing to stay gentle anyway. Still on certain nights, I feel the ghost of that ache hum around my ribs at 3 a.m., craving that destructive solace. But now I greet it like an old acquaintance acknowledge its presence. Take a breath and whisper, not this time, because I learned something hard and true. That craving isn't the enemy, but it needs boundaries, space and context. That betrayal doesn't forever define you, it can dismantle you or be the scaffold for reclamation. That forgiveness isn't fix. It's the courage to become someone safer than your worst choices. Once I lost myself to desire in the back of buildings and inside the breathless half-light of regret. Now, I find myself on the other side, writer, mentor, witness to women who survived enough to say, I'm choosing myself now. That's the unexpected twist. Not who I lost, but who I rebuilt myself to become and what I built from those shards. Over the months, the writing circle continued to grow. We met in sunlit community rooms, kitchens filled with the smell of fresh mint tea, and cozy bookstores arranged with low couches. Women came with trembling voices and heavy stories, and left carrying lines that felt like mantras chosen, coded, sacred. One November evening, after a particularly raw session, Elise surprised me with a small gathering at her home. Candles flickered in amber jars. We passed around pumpkin bread, wrapped in scarves, and quiet laughter. The zine we'd made, I Am Allowed to Want More, was next to a vase of late-season flowers. Elise's daughter played quietly nearby. We spoke about longing, not the kind that haunts at dawn, but the kind that pulls you toward what feels safe, soft, life-affirming again. That's when Jenna arrived. She slid in with warmth-bright eyes, a slight smile, and took a seat in the circle. She looked like she belonged in stories, delicate features, yet something magnetic in the way she sat upright, absorbing every word. Afterwards, she slipped beside me and whispered, "Thank you for giving me a language again." We talked for ages after, about writing, heartbreak, how betrayal rewires what we believe we deserve. She told me she'd come out of an affair that rebuilt her shame. She'd hidden in guilt so long she forgot how to want safety. I shared more than I usually would. The longing that didn't die. The ache that still surfaces at wrong moments. The journal line I left behind that someone else claimed. He woke up again, and I stayed. She nodded, eyes glistening. "It's what made me know I wasn't alone," she said. Then she asked, quietly, "What about now?" I realized there was a question echoing in my own chest. What about me now? So I said simply, I'm choosing someone who holds me awake, gentle, who wants morning and midnight. Jenna looked at me, heart aligned. That night, instead of parting ways in the hall, we walked outside together. The air was crisp. Leaves! Underfoot, headlights passing by. Silence was soft between us, an invitation rather than an obligation. Later, she leaned in and kissed me. Not urgent, slow, surprising, tender, the kind of kiss that stitches something new into the spaces we believed were broken. We started seeing each other, carefully. Real dinners where she asked how my day was, how therapy was going. Books exchanged, wine sipped, hands found in dark theaters. No secrets, no lies. Just curiosity, rebuilding trust bit by bit. In daylight. One evening, after a reading event at a local bookshop, she walked me home through quarters hung with twinkling lights. I stopped beneath a bare street lamp and told her about how Matt reached out after publication with a note of peace, how readers found each other through my words, how forgiveness can mean someone else's peace from your stories. She listened. Then she said, "You taught me to believe in love again, not chaos, but kindness. And I want to believe it with you." That line of promise wrapped in vulnerability echoed inside me. I allowed myself to feel it, allowed the shaking softness. And I replied, "I believe it too, so we began something new. Not by accident, not by frailty, but by choice. We moved in together 6 months later, renting a small house with a yard where morning sun poured through unguarded windows. Isabel wrote every morning. Jenna sat nearby with her own work, painting, knitting, sometimes just reading. Their routines intertwined, comfortable silence no longer empty. On our first anniversary, I found her on the porch where she'd laid out a picnic blanket with wildflowers and champagne. We watched the sunset over the city. I reached into my bag, pulled out the zine, I'm Allowed to Want More. On the last page, I'd written a note. "Thank you for choosing gentle. Thank you for learning to hold the aching parts and letting them breathe. With you, I'm learning that wanting can mean healing." She kissed me then, as light as breath and as firm as devotion. In that moment, I let longing become love safe. Steady, soft, he woke up, continued round 2, and I still didn't let go. But in the end, I found someone to hold me awake again. Gentle, honest, healing. And I let go not of longing entirely, but of craving the chaos it once needed. This is not a perfect end, but it's real, it's tender, and it's ours.